Okay, well, I guess I never stop my recording, so there will be 10 minutes in the middle of this video. I'll put a note in the comments um, to skip from 14 minutes to 24 minutes. Sorry about that, because you will see a blank screen. Okay, so we are going to resume. We want to build our navigation bar in our header. So I put the link in the chat just before, but you can find it on Blackboard as well. So here's the link to the Bootstrap 5 nav bars, and you scroll down to the section that says nav. There's also a little link here. It gives us a basic kind of gray navigation bar, and it actually gives us the code we can copy and then we can modify. We can change the color. Obviously, we want to change some of these links as well. So in this section, again, if you can get to it from the link, it's in the chat, and it's here on Blackboard. So I'm just going to click copy in this section underneath. So here's the sample of what the navbar looks like. And this is all the HTML with the Bootstrap classes that we need. So we're going to copy this. And then where do we want to put this? What file or files should we paste our navbar into? Yeah, so into our brand new header. So inside of the body, I'm going to put it right here. So I want our navigation bar to be the first thing inside the body of every page. So just paste it in. And then to format my HTML neatly, I'll just click Control A to select everything, and then I can format my document. So now that's going to indent my nav properly under the body. You don't have to do that. So now both our movies and movie details pages should have this little gray navigation bar. So I'll go back to my site and refresh. And now I've got a full-length navigation bar. We can customize it in a minute. If I go back to movie details and refresh, so now we've got it here. I did, the link is right here. Here's the link. It'll take you right to this section. So just copy. And then there's a copy button. So if you click copy, it will grab that for you. That's okay, no problem. And then I just pasted it in at the bottom of the header underneath our opening body tag. So now any page that includes the header is going to have our nav bar. Now obviously we need to make some changes here. It says nav bar, and these links don't necessarily make sense. So let's go and change the links, and then we can look at also the formatting. So our first link for me, it's on line 21. It has a class of navbar-brand, and that makes it bigger. So that's this link that says navbar. That's this one here. The font is bold. It's larger text. So we're going to change this from the word navbar. We want it to say PHP Flicks. And it typically, the name of our site, it typically links to the home page, right? So this should go to our index.php. So there's our first link. We want the link to say PHP Flicks, and we want it to go to our home page. So we'll try that out. So I'll refresh. So when I click, it takes me to the home page. Now our home page needs our header as well, doesn't it? We've got no CSS, we've got no Google font, we have no navigation bar. So we will add it. The home link we can get rid of. We don't need a link. So I'm going to change this second link to say movies. So in this list, we've got this one. We'll change this so it doesn't say active. The href here is going to be to movies.php, and our link will say movies. We can then add a couple more links that we're going to use next week. Our third link will go to a page called register.php. Next week, we're going to start adding authentication. So we're going to build links to register and log in. So these will be forms we'll build next week. And I'm going to get rid of this last link. We don't need it for now. So there's going to be 4 links in the navbar. The one with the class of navbar brand, that'll be our homepage link, and it says PHP Flicks. And then we'll have links for movies, register, and log in. So if I refresh, now our navbar looks like this. So register and log in don't work yet. That's okay. But we can go to home, and we can go to the list of movies. We also should add our navigation bar now to the home page. And if we add not only our nav bar, but we also want to add our page header. So I'm going to open up my index.php. I'm going to take out the first 6 lines because all of this stuff is going to come from the header. So I'm going to replace that. Again, we'll require our header here. So now we have a site we can navigate around easily. Now when I refresh, right, I can start to move around the site. But we have this one shared header. So any changes we want to make to the navigation bar, those changes are available globally. All the pages will inherit those changes, much like when we link in a CSS file. Yes, Tyler, that's exactly what we're going to do, right? So the page titles get, well, let's see, right? Yeah, because it says movies on every page. So this is where we're going to add a little bit of PHP into the title tag in our header. Because right now, every page, if we scroll up, we see a title tag here, just says movies. Well, for search engine optimization, each page should have a more descriptive title. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to replace this with a variable, and Hamid, you asked, why is the header a PHP file, right? Couldn't this just be HTML? Well, up till now, yeah, it could be HTML, but we're going to add some PHP code, and then next week when we do authentication, we're going to add more PHP code. So when someone is not logged in, they see these links. But after they log in, we want to show their email address and a log out link. So we'll need some more PHP code in the header next week. So what I'm going to do here is in the title tag, I'm going to replace this with an echo statement. We want to print out a variable called title in the page header. And then on each individual page, we want to set the proper page title. Or actually, maybe I'll do it this way. I'll do PHP Flicks, and then like a pipe symbol. So we'll always have the name of our site, but then each page will have a unique page title, which is good for search engine. So I'll save that change. We'll go back and check out what this does. So now I get this warning here. We've got this undefined variable. So we need to go into each of the pages where we've required the header. And before we require the header, we want to set this page title variable. So first I'll go to index and I'll set title equals here it'll just say welcome on the home page. So if I go back and look at my home page now, so if I go to home, it now says PHP Flicks and I've got welcome. I'll want to do the same thing on movies and on movie details. Before requiring the header, we'll want to set a value for the title variable. So on movies, say title equals movies. And then I'll also set a title of movie details on the movie details.php. So this way we have a shared header, but that page title value is dynamic. Tyler, I assume this is where what you were thinking. So on the movie details, again, we need to set the variable before including the header. So now each page, even though we've got a shared header, that header contains this variable that we can change from page to page. So our site is search engine friendly. So these errors should go away. Okay, so now as I move around, I get a proper page title in my browser tab. Movie details. I think the database just died on us again. It will come back. Yeah. Works on our homepage because we're not using the database. Okay, so we can share our header, but still customize the page title. So Hamid, this is why we made our header with a PHP extension, because I knew we were gonna make those page titles dynamic. And then next week, we're gonna add some PHP logic here to show or hide different links, depending on whether our user is anonymous or whether they've logged in. So always a good idea to use PHP extensions in case we need to add PHP code later. We don't want to have to change our links. So I would recommend when we're working in the PHP world, I would never create files, any files with an HTML extension, because it's not scalable. If we add a PHP extension, we can just put PHP code in and all our links are still going to work. Okay. Now we can make our navbar look a little bit better. I know there's a bunch of designers in the class. You're probably not super loving the gray. Fortunately, it is mobile responsive, right? So when we use Bootstrap, this is the cool thing. We get the little hamburger pop-up drop-down menu. You know, it scales automatically for us, which is great. That's one of the best reasons to use Bootstrap. We get this mobile responsive framework. we don't have to take the time to make it mobile responsive. So we can customize this. We'll spend a few minutes. Why don't we pick out, we already picked out a font. We can create a simple color scheme. I'm going to give you a link. It's right here on Blackboard. So open up this Google Material Design Palette. Let's go and choose a color scheme. So these are color palettes. You can see the colors here from Google. We also have access to the Google icon sets if you want. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on a couple of colors. So maybe I'll pick a red and a gray. And then the design, it gives me, now it previews it almost like this is an Android app on an Android tablet, is how it's laid out. But it gives me a color palette of some complementary colors. So what I'm going to do is I can use a couple of these colors in our style sheet and override the color scheme that comes here. And maybe what I want to do is make my nav bar this kind of red and then use some of the gray. So I'm going to click on this color, this dark primary color, to copy it to my clipboard. You can choose any colors you like. So pick any two that you want to work with. And I'm going to make a few changes to our header. First of all, notice here it's got this class of Navbar Light and BG Light. So I'm going to change this to Navbar Dark. And I think I'll take out the BG Light class. And then I'm going to override the Bootstrap class in my CSS. So I'm going to customize Bootstrap with some of my own colors. So in my File Explorer, we already created a style sheet a few weeks ago when we set our Google font. So I'm going to set the Navbar Dark class and now I'm going to paste in that value that I got of that red color that I picked from the Google Design Palette. So I changed my navbar from Navbar Light to Navbar Dark. I took out the BG Light class. And then I've overridden the Bootstrap class of Navbar Dark. Let's see how this works. Not very well. Hang on. Maybe that's not the right class. Okay. I think I want to override, whoops, the wrong class. I think it's BG Dark I want. I never remember. I'm just going to try it. I'll show you the code. Bear with me. Yeah, AWS, it keeps going up and down. Hang on, let me check it out. What did I do wrong? Bear with me for a second. Did it in one of my other ones, my style sheet. Okay, I overrode navbar -dark. Okay, so why isn't this working? Navbar -dark. Take out the BG Dark. I may have to come back to this. I'm not sure why this isn't working. It should be. There, okay. So now I've got the red color with white links. Sorry about the confusion. So I changed my navbar light to navbar dark. I took out the class of BG dark. So the only class here is navbar dark. And then my style sheet, I set up a background color and I used that red from the color palette. I could also override, maybe I want to use this gray color for all my links. So instead of being blue, any links are gray. Mine was as well, and then make sure you use the background color. So I'm also going to grab this gray color. Maybe I like this secondary text. And I'm going to overwrite the anchor color. So we'll say any regular links. I'm going to make them gray. Make sure I save. I'll hit Control F5. Still just white. Mine was white, and then it... Okay, I'll show the changes one more time. Oh, it should be not .a. My anchor tags, it's not a class, it's just the tag itself, should be gray. So my link's showing gray now rather than in blue. If it's still white, something may be cached. Yeah, a hard reload. That's what I had to do. Thank you, Sarah. So I hit Control and F5 to refresh. It does a hard reload. That way your CSS is not cached. So you may have to hit Control F5. That's what I had to do. It's okay. You can play around with it later. I am recording and I will post it. And I think our database is still down, which shouldn't really affect it. So you can play around with the colors however you like. Okay, so at least we've got now a little 3-page site we can navigate around. And if we want to make more changes to our navigation bar, which we will do next week, the bar changed, but the links are white. Even with a hard refresh. Try a different browser. I'm curious if you get the same result. Yeah, our database is up and down like a toilet seat. Okay. The CSS, we already linked it into the header actually. We did this a few weeks ago when we added the Google font. So we added our link to Google font. We created a CSS folder and the style sheet where we set the default font, or you could use an import statement. And then we included this in our header. Okay, well, I will post my stuff to GitHub shortly and you can check it. So again, our class is navbar.dark. In the style sheet, you need the dot because it's a class definition. And make sure you take out that BG light that came with the navbar. You have all that. Yeah, make sure you've got the link to your style sheet, your custom style sheet in the header. Okay, you can always post it to GitHub and send me a link and I can look at it after class. Okay, if it's not working now, you can also undo and just put the gray nav bar back if you want. For now, you can just copy that first line, put in navbar light, BG light, and that should give you your gray navbar back. They're not quite white. They're a light, kind of a light gray, and they do have this little rollover effect. So they get lighter when you mouse over them. Okay, so we've looked at using include and require. If you want an extra challenge, you can look at building a footer and making the footer sticky. So the footer is anchored at the bottom of the window. And you can try styling it. So you're free to go ahead and attempt that. I'm just going to do the shared header. So we've shared our header, we've shared our database file. So these are reusable components. So one of the other things we want to add here is we need to talk a little bit about handling errors in PHP. In fact, I think my page is going to crash right now. We're probably going to get an error. We'll just wait and let this die. Yep, I'm getting an error right here. So normally we would never want to show this to our end users. Right? In fact, this is dangerous to just let the page fail because you can see here it's actually got my database credentials. Printing them out to the screen, incredibly dangerous. So things do happen in our application, things like this, our database connection drops. What are some other common types of errors that happen in web applications? So a connection to a database fails, what else could go wrong? Okay, yeah, thanks, Mark. So right here, right? There's a really common one, right? File not found. We clicked register or log in. We get 404 not found. Yeah, Tyler, we could get inputs that crash our page, and we've checked for that a little bit already, haven't we, in our form. Sorry, like if we want to add a movie, we've done some checking. Yep. Anything else that could cause errors in our pages? So things not found, database offline, invalid input. Yeah, there could be errors in our code. So we've made a syntax error or logic error, for example. So there's all kinds of things that could go wrong. Several people also said having some slides. I will try to do slides. I've posted these on Blackboard, so I'll go through these quickly. Yeah, logic errors. Several people mentioned they like having lecture slides. I will try to post them. So we do have slides for today on error handling. Go over these quickly, and then we're going to implement it. Okay, so even in good applications, we can have errors. So it might be bugs. People may try things that we didn't think about, so we didn't test those scenarios. We can have technical issues. Like right now, our database connection keeps going up and down. Our site can also get hacked. So these are all common problems that we need to think about and prepare our site for. And realistically, our code is probably not going to be, yes, Daniel, that's exactly why PDO error messages are hidden by default. So we want to write bug-free code, but if the biggest software companies in the world are regularly putting out patches for their software, guess what? We're probably going to have to patch our software. So we need some kind of system. We need to anticipate that, yes, errors are going to happen sometimes. They may be our fault. They may not be. But we can't just kind of let our pages crash and show whatever errors the systems generate to our users. So here are some we test things, but we can't test everything. For example, we do file uploads. We need to check what happens if people upload files, and we'll do this in a few weeks. What happens if they upload files that aren't the right type, like a Word document they're uploading to an image gallery? Tyler mentioned invalid input. So for example, in the United States, most postal codes have 5 characters, but there are actually some that have 9 characters. And I once built an application where users were complaining they couldn't register because they had 9-character postal codes. So something like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but then there's a dash and 4 more letters, 4 more numbers. Maybe we add input validation for a North American phone number, but then we have customers or users from other parts of the world trying to enter their phone number and our site doesn't let us. Or maybe, we say a city name of 25 characters and then someone has a legitimate city name that's longer than that. So we can't always anticipate the kinds of inputs we're going to get from users. Yeah, that's right. And then there's all kinds of tech problems that can happen. So things like our server being down, people losing internet connectivity, right? Changes to browsers. So something that used to work and a new browser update doesn't work, or operating system bugs. So we have no way to prevent these things. We just have to make sure our applications can handle them when they happen, because they are going to happen sooner or later. We can also be subject of attack. So things like denial of service, where the server gets flooded with requests and overloaded. We've talked a bit about SQL injection before, how we use things like bound parameters to try and prevent those attacks. We can be subject to cross-site scripting, bypassing of authorization, or password cracking. And we'll look at some of these things and how we prevent them from a security perspective over the next couple of classes. So we have to be defensive in our programming. There's a number of things that we can do. We can look for server error codes, common things like 404 errors. We can set up custom error pages, which we're going to do. We're going to implement try-catch blocks. For those of you, you may have learned a bit about try-catch in some of your other classes. Well, PHP supports try-catch. We could use error logs or even email. I set up most of my websites when there's an error to email the error to me. Okay, well, we'll look at it. So many times I would get errors in the middle of the night, wake up in the morning, see the error message, fix the page before my customer could even call me to tell me that they knew something was wrong on their website. Now, we're not going to do this because we don't have access to a mail server, but in a real world environment, it's a good idea in your error handling to send those notices to an inbox that is monitored. So HTTP has a list of response codes, and any response codes that start with a 400 or 500, those are errors. These are the most common ones. Obviously, a page not found, forbidden, so a user tries to access a resource that they don't have permissions to access. And there are issues with the server itself, where the server is offline. So we can tell the server in PHP what should happen if any one of these errors happens. And we are going to do this for 404 errors, because it is the most common. Right? So when we click register, we don't want this ugly page. We want to show a 404 page that says something like page not found. It includes our header, it includes our CSS, it looks like the rest of the site. We also want to create custom error pages so that if something else goes wrong, like if I disconnect from the VPN and this page doesn't load, let's do that for a moment. Right, I'll let it fail. Rather than showing the users an error message, we can use a try-catch block to handle it more gracefully. We don't want this. We should take them to an error page instead. So we're going to create 2 custom error pages today, one for 404 errors and one for any other general error that might happen. So we want to show them something like this. So a try-catch block looks something like this. For those of you who've done Java coding, you may have implemented try-catch already. So try-catch has this structure. We open a try block. So for example, try connecting to the database, running a query, and displaying our list of movies. So all that code will be inside of the try. If an error happens, like we can't connect to the database, we are going to catch it. And then we can load a different page, for example. In terms of accessing the errors, so normally we implement this once our pages are done. We don't want to implement the try-catch while we're working on them because that makes debugging difficult. So when we're in development mode, we want to see these errors. But once our website is published, that's when we really add those try-catch blocks towards the end. So these pages, like movies and movie details, they're done, so we can add the try-catch blocks here. But we wouldn't add them until we've tested them and we're confident. We can also create something like an error log where we could write to a text file. And typically we would store the date and time, the client IP, the HTTP error, what page they were on, and what error message. And often these get written as text files. We'll probably skip this stuff, but this would be done in most real-world sites. So for example, if I go and look on one of my client sites, in here there should be an error log. So here these would be error logs. But maybe somewhere in here there would be a log file of any errors that happen. So here's one. Let's see, from December, we could open it up and we can see what kind of errors got reported. So we can see the date and time, the IP address, what URL, what browser, and if there are errors, they would get recorded here. Could search for a 404. Here, okay, so I can see 404 requests. So they were looking for this file. It was a robot and it got a 404 error. So I can see what's happening in these. And then we might send email notifications. Again, we don't have the ability to do this, but in a production application, we would want to send the error message, what was the URL, if the user is logged in, which user got the error, and if there was a form, we can even send ourselves the form values. So if it's a problem with something someone's entering in a form, we can see it. And it will often show us the line number in our code. So often this lets us know as soon as an error occurs, so we can often fix these things quickly. So let's start by, we're going to create 2 error pages, one for 404 errors, like this, and then another one for any other general errors that happen. So we'll create these pages and then we'll implement some error handling in our application. So let's deal with let's make our general error page first. So in my root folder, not inside my includes, but in the root folder, I'm going to make a new file called error.php. It'll be an empty file. We'll put on our header at the top. And we will require so there's our header. And we'll just put on here and we'll end our body. So this is just a general error page. If something goes wrong, like our database connection is offline, we're going to show our users this page. So they, instead of seeing this, they'll get a page with our header and kind of a general response. So the error message is hidden. The page looks more professional, and we're apologizing to the user. Many error pages, developers put, funny pictures on there because it's up to you what content. You don't have to copy this content exactly. You can put your own error message here. Up to you. So it will look like this. So anytime we use a try catch, if an error is caught, we're going to redirect the user and show them this page. So I'm going to go to the movies page, and we're now going to implement one of those try catch blocks. And to try this out, what I'm going to recommend is disconnect from the VPN. So we're going to drop our database connection for a moment so that when we try to load the movies page, our connection will fail, and we are going to redirect and load our error page instead. Because right now, if you disconnect and click on movies, this is what you'll get. We're going to get our PHP error being spit out on the page, and our page starts to load and then just kind of dies. So disconnect from the VPN temporarily, and then we'll open the code in the movies page. It won't take us long to implement try catch. So I'm going to go to my movies page. And basically, this entire thing, well, actually, we'll do the try catch in here. So inside our PHP block of code, anytime we're trying to connect to the database and perform create, read, update, or delete, we should use a try catch block because it's possible that operation might fail if our database connection goes down. So I'm going to take all of the code, highlight everything inside of my PHP tags. I'm just going to indent it. And above that, the very first line of PHP, I'm going to type try. And I'm going to open a curly brace. Okay, so we are going to try to do all of this work. Connect, run a query, loop through and display all the results, disconnect. After the final line where we disconnect, I'm going to close the curly brace. So this whole thing is inside of this try block. And whenever we use try, we also need to use catch. So what happens if there's an error anywhere in this try block? So we are going to catch an error, or also commonly known as an exception. So if I run the code like this, my page, we won't see an error in the page anymore. But if we get an error, so PHP's got a weird syntax for doing redirects. In most other web languages, there's a command called redirect. In PHP, we use this weird command. We use header, and then in quotes, a location. So we're changing the HTTP header. This will redirect. So there's our catch block. So if there are any errors, whether it's the database connection or we have a syntax error, it doesn't matter. If any errors happen here, take the user to the error page. Don't show them this. So again, to try this out, disconnect from Tyler, good question. We'll try it. Feel free to try. Well, Tyler, why don't you try it and tell me what happens. It's a very good question. So now I'm going to go back, save my change. Okay, so all of our original code, again, it's inside this try block, inside this set of curly braces. And if anything in there fails, we want to redirect to the error page. So I'm going to refresh. It's going to try to connect to the database and run our query and fetch our movies. And instead, we now get taken to the error page. So this is the result we want. If I reconnect to the VPN, we can now see, I'll click on movies again. I'll see if the database is back up. If the database comes back up, our movie list should load. If our AWS server, obviously it's still offline. So this is the result. Yeah, if you require it, and now it's back up. So we want to redirect. We can also try this, like what happens if I make a syntax error? I'm not sure if my try catch will execute. Let's try it. Maybe I do something like take out this semicolon. So I'll save. My code editor is warning me, hey, this is probably going to break. But notice what happens. So the try catch doesn't handle syntax errors. It only handles logic or functional errors. Okay, so it won't fix your syntax. This is where I use, I can see red highlighting and Visual Studio Code's telling me there's an error. So our syntax we should be fixing in our coding. So now when if I disconnect again, click on my movies, my try catch is now going to hide the error message and take me to the error page. So we've enabled error handling now on the movies page. We should be putting it on our other pages as well. So if we go to edit or save or delete a page, a movie, we should have try catch on all of these. So we'll do that when we come back. And then the last thing we'll need to do, which we'll have to handle differently, is the 404 error handling. So we're going to implement try catch on our details, our save and delete pages, and then we will also look at 404 handling when we come back. Let's take a 10-minute break. I will upload everything to GitHub now, and we will come back in 10 minutes.